Look at that. What a wonderful view, isn't it? Thanks to invention, we are now able to see and catch a glimpse behind the wonders of the microscopic world. And it is all thanks to microscope. But to know a little bit more better, we need to firstly understand the history behind how microscope existed in the very first place. First up, we have the iconic Dutch father and son team duo named Hans and Zacharias Janssen invented the first so-called compound microscope in the late 1600s when they discovered if you put a lens at the top and bottom of a tube and look through it, objects on the other end became magnified. We can't forget Antony van Leeuwenhoek, who made microscopes consisting of a single high-quality lens of very short focal length. At the time, such simple microscopes were preferable to the compound microscope. In 1674, he likely observed protozoa for the first time, and several years later, bacteria. Those very little animalcules, as he calls them, were collected from different sources such as rainwater, pond, and the human mouth. So now let us take a look at the types of microscope. First up, under the light category, we have the compound microscope. One of the most common type of compound microscope are the bright field transmitted light microscope. These are the type of microscope that you see a lot during high school. The object to be inspected is normally placed on a clear glass slide and light is transmitted through the object. This makes the object appear against a bright background. Therefore, you'll get the term bright field. It is also important to mention that the most suitable type of specimen to be seen under the bright field transmitted light microscope are the ones that are either colored or stained. So what do we need to do if we were to examine an unstained biological specimen? Well, phase contrast microscope is the answer. Transmitted light phase contrast, which is used in PCM, is an illumination technique which enhances the phase differences between the specimen and its surrounding. Why? Because specimens which have a refractive index similar to their surrounding can be invisible in bright field, but in this case they are well defined. Epifluorescence or reflected light fluorescence is a technique in which light in a certain band of wavelength is allowed to strike the specimen. The specimen then absorbs this light energy and emits light of a longer wavelength. Specimens may be autofluorescent or they may be stained with a special fluorochrome. We also have to be aware that fluorescent microscopy is often used to image specific features of small specimens such as microbes. Next, under the light category, we have the stereo microscope, and what we really need to know is that it produces 3D visual information for the specimen that we are examining. For the result, you'll get images like this and this. Next, we're going to look at the electron microscope. The transmission electron microscope (TEM) works by shooting a beam of electrons at a thin slice of a sample and detecting those electrons that make it through to the other side. The TEM let us look at a very high resolution at a thin section of a sample, which makes it particularly good for learning about how components inside a cell, such as organelles, are structured. In the electron microscope (SEM) let us see the surface of three-dimensional objects in high resolution. It works by scanning the surface of an object with a focused beam of electron and detecting electrons that are reflected from and knocked off from the sample surface. Here you can see the differences between TEM, where you can look through the sample, and the image produced by SEM, where you can look at the whole surface of a sample. And finally, we're going to move on to the parts of microscope. And the type of microscope that we'll be looking at is the compound microscope. Let's start with the top part, which is the ocular lens, where the viewer looks through to see the specimen. Usually contains around 10 times up to 15 times power lens. Next, we also have the diopter adjustment, which is used to adjust and set the binoculars. And the nose piece, which hold all the objective lens and it can revolve. And we also have the objective lenses. They are basically the lenses that are closest to the specimen that range in power from 4 times to 100 times magnification. Mechanical stage, the flat platform with a slide is placed. Stage clips, metal clips that hold slide in place. And aperture, the hole that allows light to come through. Coarse and fine adjustment fine-tunes the focus and increases the detail of the specimen. Diaphragm adjusts the amount of light that reaches the specimen. And condenser gathers light from the illuminator onto the specimen being viewed. That's all for the microscope topic.